Good morning, West Africa and beyond. Welcome to Citizens Hour here on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal, and online at WADR.org. You can also follow our live streamings on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at West Africa Democracy Radio English service. I am Imo Edet here in Dakar. Well, Usman, you have to. All right, go ahead, Usman.
Hello, Imo.
Yes, you were muted.
All right, thank you very much. I was welcoming our guests and listeners from all over the world. Those who are following us on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal, we say welcome. And for those of you who are following us via other digital platforms, such as our Facebook and our YouTube, we say welcome one, welcome all. Imo.
Indeed. Today we are tackling two stories that sit at the very heart of the West African struggle for stable governance and human security. Usman.
Imo, can you hear me?
No, you went off for some time. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Of course, first of all, we will be looking at the growing debate over whether West African governments should negotiate with bandits and terror groups. Is this a victory for pragmatism or a blow to the rule of law? Imo.
Yes, and in our second conversation, we turn our gaze to Nigeria, where snakebite emergencies are claiming lives at an alarming rate. Is this a public health failure or simply an act of nature? Do stay with us for all of these and more.
L'heure des citoyens, votre espace pour des débats démocratiques.
All right, across region, the surge in kidnappings and terrorism has forced difficult questions on the table. Should the state negotiate with non-state armed groups? Usman.
Thank you very much for that backgrounder. Because joining us to dissect this is Dr. Tony Ofoyetan. He is the Director General of the International Institute of Professional Security. And we're also expected to be joined. We're expecting to be joined by Sir Young, who is, of course, a former Deputy Director for Operations at the National Security Agency. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Mo, and professional colleagues that are there. I feel very excited, and I want to also use this opportunity to say very happy New Year to you guys.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Glad we could have you on board this morning. Well, let's start from a professional security standpoint. Does negotiating with bandits set a dangerous precedent that encourages further criminality, or is it a necessary evil, as they will say, to save lives?
Well, thank you, Mo. It's a combination of both. It's a combination of both, depending on the strength of the terrorists, as it were.
Dr. Tony,
Dr.
Tony,
yes,
before you proceed, would you mind just coming on your video? So for our viewers on YouTube and Facebook.
You would have to permit me a bit.
Okay, sir. Please proceed. Please go ahead. We understand.
Thank you. Okay, so like I was saying, I just discovered that if the terrorist, for one reason or the other, is holding something very dear and important to you, maybe, for example, the kidnap of human lives, it may be difficult for you to talk about not negotiating if you have explored the options of how to rescue, and it's a little bit difficult. But what you now look at is what will be the aftermath of the negotiation. What are the terms and conditions? If the terms and conditions are such that will prolong terrorism, you want to weigh the cost. If, for example, they are saying for us to release these 5 people, give us 1,000 grenades, give us a 550, AK-47, and also give us a 20 billion naira, $20 billion and the like. You want to wait vis-a-vis the loss that is at hand. So these are very, very important things you want to consider as it were. Then, of course, if it has to do with the kidnap or politically exposed, it is not, the problem is not with the issue of negotiation. The problem is with what you are giving in exchange for what they want. That is actually the major thing, because the truth is that there is nothing we can compare to lives. It's easy for us to come on air and begin to say don't negotiate with terrorists, but will you have the same position if your child, your daughter, your husband, your wife, any of your loved one is actually the kidnapped victim? So these are things we have to look at. And having also said that too, from the government perspective, the proceeds of a negotiation can unfortunately be the elongation of terrorism. That is why you see government will tell you that we don't want to negotiate with terrorists, because whatever we are giving them is basically going to help them, fortify them the more, increase whatever strength they have before now and all those stuff like that. So the options have to be weighed properly before government will take any fundamental decision. But at individual level, if you have the opportunity to negotiate to get your loved ones out, you do that. But if you don't have option, then the government have to come all out. In most cases, negotiation is always easier because of the weaknesses of the government, and also because of the participation of what I call participants criminals at the level of those that are in government, those that are in power, those that have those advantages and are participating in such crime. Don't forget that, let me give an example of a thing like a kidnapping. Kidnapping is of different angles, for ritual, for negotiation, for ransom, Now, all this combined together, the government now have to ask itself a simple question. What will be the aftermath of each step that we are going to take in the redemption of those that have been kidnapped? What is going to be the effect if we did not rescue them? Now, who are those that actually were responsible for this issue of kidnapping? What is their strengths and their weaknesses? What actually are they going to use the money for? Which we all know anyway are their internal forces that have actually aided the success of this kidnap or this abduction, as we have majorly in Nigeria, being even much more than kidnapping, because for some of us, we see it as a big time terrorism financing business. You kidnap students in their hundreds and church members in their hundreds, and then you negotiate with the government surreptitiously, and they come and tell you that we did not pay any ransom. The kidnappers just decided to release them. It doesn't work like that. Kidnappers will have spent money on logistics, money on arms, money on feeding, money on movement, money on a lot of things. They will not just tell you, they will not just release those people, because it's also business. So at the end of the day, yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to chip this in. I mean, there have been cases where we've seen negotiations with bandits allow for the continuity of governance in some states across West Africa. We've seen, that happen even in the Sahel, in Mali at some point, the Tuareg rebels and the government at that time, going into negotiations. Are there always a place for these two to meet, and then we have governance flow without any interruption?
Let me give an example of what happened recently in Castina, where you have one of the political figures going into the village into the forests to negotiate with the terrorists, and also try to encourage the federal government not to come all out persecuting them. And we've had instances where top government functionaries have also come to say that these guys are not very bad people. For example, you have somebody like Gumi, who is more or less like I don't know whether the official or the unofficial spokesperson for terrorist groups in the country. Now, the same thing is applicable to most of the countries in the southwestern region. Now, for those set of people to gain access to the terrorists is not a problem. Why it's not a problem is basically because they are surreptitiously propagating and there is support of their mission. They may tell you that they are not in support, but what will you say of a person that will come to the public to tell you that not all terrorists are bad people and all those stuff like that, and that government should not even be killing them? So these are orchestrated, well-organized syndicates globally for religious purposes and for political and economic purposes. Now, these three factors are just sacrosantly present perpetually, but the major fueling point is always that of religious bigotry, because the foot soldiers, now those people that are the strategists, the protagonists, may have political or socioeconomic agenda. Now, but for them to be able to convince and have those machines, the foot soldiers on the field, they need to indoctrinate them on the ground of religion. Nobody is going to be indoctrinated on ground of political affiliations or on the ground of what you call economic emancipation and all those stuff like that. The major ingredient that actually, indoctrinate them is always the religious aspect of it. Don't forget that they said that religion is like an opium. So that actually is the main thing. They have access to the terrorist organization. And another thing also,
Dr. Tony,
yes,
but let me just interject here respectfully to welcome your other colleague on the panel, of course, Mr. Sam Saryong, a former Deputy Director for Operations at the National Security Agency. Welcome on board, Mr. Saryong.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me first of all extend my greeting to all of the panelists. I was finding it difficult to get in. Finally, I'm being connected by WhatsApp. So we talking today about the issues on negotiating with terrorist organizations. It's not only in the Islamic migrant, but in our region and other places. It is important to know that the definition of terror is not always clear. I have worked in intelligence organization throughout my life. Okay. The FBI has, for instance, allowed private companies, to negotiate on behalf and release hostages taken in other places around the world. Even though those organizations were not designated as terrorist organizations, but undoubtedly they terrorize the local communities. Negotiating with terrorists, it is difficult. Besides that, it also fuels further hostage taking and fuel from the terrorist operational capacity. I think it is not okay to negotiate with terrorists because, as I have worked in that negotiation process before, negotiating with terrorists, not only that the ransom that is paid, it fuel them, infatuate them, they upgrade, like right now in our region, around Nigeria, around Burkina Faso, Mali, the Islamic migrant, as per they upgraded their platform. They are taking money, they are taking ransom, not only from intermediary. Like so recently, the migrant in Mali, the supplies of fuel into Bamako. That went on for days. Negotiation was.
Yes. Mr. Sayong. Mr. Sayong.
Yes, sir.
Of course, before, I'm sure, I don't know if you listened to Dr. Ofoyeton, who, of course, in his initial take, made reference to why it is easy, or easier rather, for us on radio or TV or in other platforms to, speak against negotiating with terrorists. He gave example of, just imagine if it's your own family member or someone you know that is involved in this process, and the only way to get them out as quickly as possible is to negotiate and pay this ransom. But from what you are saying, if I get you clearer, you are saying that the act of negotiating with the bandits or terrorists only end up to consolidate their power, of course, enabling them to gain more ground. But what's your opinion about de-escalation of violence and ensuring stability? through negotiations with these groups?
Well, as you may understand, our definition for terrorists and these bandits, banditry is increasing recently because people found it as means of generating funds. You know, in West Africa, we have lots of people unemployed. We got vulnerable communities in our region. If you just look at the vulnerable community, we got millions of people unemployed in Nigeria, millions unemployed in all the West African countries, including my country. So you have a vulnerable community. The vulnerable community are easier to be radicalized, to press on, and have them into your organization. One they believe the banditry and the terrorists in hostage taking are generated in funds. People are definitely finding an alternative form of an employment. If the government, the state cannot employ, there are no private sector. People are gradually walking towards the process of working, the process of joining the banditry, joining the terrorist group as means of survival. So our region, if you think you want to negotiate and your family members are involved, your friends are involved, I think from my perspective, the intelligence agencies should be strengthened enough. They should be strengthened enough. That's why they are intelligence agencies. They have the capacity, the technical know-how to penetrate this organization and identify their operational bases, their locations, the tactics they use, the methods and means they use to operate. Because fighting terrorism, the first tools at disposal of law enforcement is to disorganize their finances. But for the Maghreb region, for the Shia region, right now, these terrorist organizations have increased. They have created, upgraded the digital platforms where people are paying ransom through these means. And these digital platforms are now monitored, particularly in conflict zones. So ransoms are paid through this means. So the only solution I think can help reduce, it might not eradicate it, reduce it to a minimum, is to strengthen the capacity of our intelligence agency to move in. If we continue to negotiate, probably I'm frightened to talk because my relatives has been held. Probably I'm afraid to say something that might come after me. There are people in the banditry group, there are people in the terrorist organization that got direct representative in the community where you live, in the business community where you are. They are funding businesses, they are involved in trade and commerce. This ransom money, it fueled them, it further enable them to manage control of the territory and pay members. Once this money keep going to them, they wouldn't stop.
Mr. Sion, let me interject here and take on Mr. Tony on this. From your point, you're saying, yes, it's also legitimate to negotiate with terrorists, if we understand what you're saying. Dr. Tony, how do you think victims, citizens see their governments anytime they go into negotiation? Even if, does it show a sign of weakness on the part of the government, or like we mentioned earlier, just trying to allow peace to reign, and while the bandits and terrorists and kidnappers still exist?
On the side of the government will want you not to negotiate because it will portray sign of weakness. It will portray sign of powerlessness. Let me, use that word. But on the side of the people, they just believe, they look at the antecedents, what has happened before. And they are not patient with the government because what has happened severally in their respective countries has shown that, one, even though government is capable, the level of speed in terms of response timing of government can be slow. The terrorists are impatient. They also have time bound. Crime and criminality has its own time. Time is always the enemy of the criminal. So they want to do it and get out of that space like almost immediately. You waste their time. They either waste the victim and go ahead, or alternatively they give in depending on the circumstance. So both parties are right. The government is not wrong, because the more you pay the terrorists, the more you are indirectly funding terrorism. it is one brother today, it can be, mother and children tomorrow because they now have the finance. But at the same time, how do you go about it when the government is not coming out with all its machinery? So if the West African sub-region want to be sincere, let us look at it from what happened in other climes, like the US, like Russia, Israel, and the like. You kidnap one of their citizens, they are ready to bring out the biggest of the aircraft. They are ready to deploy 1,000 aircraft and 1,000 drones. They are ready to ask the whole military formation to go into that vicinity and bring out that their own citizen. So now if the West African sub-region is able to have like a multinational joint task force against kidnapping, where they have just this response team, and the response team is well funded. They have the normal aircraft, they have the normal drone, even assault drone. They have the necessary intelligence, and they are independent. And they are independent of the government, most probably and preferably controlled purely under ECOWAS. Now, if you have a situation like that, to the extent that if there's an abduction of group of students or group of children or group of church members or mosque members in any community, that same multinational task force against terrorism will take off. Whether they are in Benin Republic, whether they are in Senegal, wherever they are, they take off immediately, condole that area immediately, enter into that country and be able to rescue. Now, if you have that type of system on ground, because you want to pull resources together to be able to be intentional about things like that, it would work. But we also expect that beyond that, the government should also be able to look inward. Each of these countries, their government, especially in terms of intelligence implementation. Now, the problem we have is not lack of intelligence. And that thing, I stand to disagree with anybody that will tell me that we don't have intelligence. No. The problem is lack of the implementation of intelligence.
But what is preventing that, Dr. Tony, if I may ask? What is preventing that, if I may ask?
That's why you need me to come in. I need to counter that.
Okay. Mr. Sion, please, let's have your thought on that.
No, let me just clarify that.
Okay, just round up, sir.
Good. So when I talk about the fact that it is not lack of intelligence, it is the lack of the implementation of intelligence. Intelligence are information that have been processed, and they have been processed to become intelligent. Data, materials, information processed to become intelligence for immediate use. Now we've had stories. I'll give an example of a place like my own country. We've had stories of where the security agencies are aware that X and Z community is going to be attacked. They are aware, but out of administrative bureaucracy or out of internal compromise, they did not do anything until that attack occurred and the perpetrator had come and gone. And we see this thing repeat itself severally, even in the West African sub-region. There is nobody. Look, for example, you hear the word unknown gunmen. Now, even as a sane man in any country, will you tell me that security agencies don't know those people that are perpetrating some act to the extent that you conveniently and lazily label them as unknown gunmen?
Well, let's allow Mr. Sayong to come in here, sir. Please, your thought on this and your counter.
Yes. So the colleague started first by saying, if this is within the Western country, they will come with these helicopters, with these bombs, with these warplanes, and all of that stuff. Look, let me get me a reference. I've been working on this terrorist banditry operation for the last 18 years in West Africa. Look, some may argue, the Islamic migrant is responsible for kidnapping numerous in the Islamic migrant in Algeria. They benefited, they were boosted significantly by millions of euros paid by France, Spain, Germany to negotiate the release of their air worker. You know why? In Africa, when kidnapping and these things happen in Western country, they don't negotiate with them in Western country. They don't go to them and negotiate and pay ransom in Western country. But it happened in Africa, in our territory, in our region. They come to negotiate with money. For us in our region, we should not encourage negotiating with money. We should not encourage ransom payment. I talk about intelligence gathering, dissemination, and intelligent funding. Our African country does not support intelligent funding. When the budget is raised and the advocate, the human rights, all the different groupings in our region, they go in the budget and see that intelligent budget is high, they tend to question the implementation. Why are you giving intelligence agencies so much money? Intelligence is money. If there are not facilitators within the government, or there are not people who aiding and abetting because they benefit financially from this banditry, if intelligence will pick up all of these individuals, all of these entities that are aiding, abetting, facilitating payment, ransom, receiving money, transferring money to these bandits, once these things are put to stop, once people are held accountable, once the intelligent information is implemented to the letter, these resources that are provided with the agency will definitely reduce or minimize to an extent where people who are attempting to kidnap school kids, people who are attempting to kidnap air workers, people who are attempting to kidnap people, those banditry that go to schools and churches and bombs and mosques, those places, they will find a reason to realize that their own life will be enriched. They will be doing it at their
Mr.
own
Sayo,
risk and expense.
you said we should not encourage negotiation. What then should we encourage? Because
No. I am not saying we should encourage negotiation. No, I'm against negotiation.
Okay.
Because if you negotiate, you got to pay ransom.
So what then should
negotiate?
So what then should the government do? Regionally,
The kind of negotiation. And let me just define the kind of negotiation I talk about. So if hostage is taken, if people are kidnapped, and the kidnapper provides our information, telephone number, we are trained to conduct what you call hostage negotiation. That negotiation is not based on ransom. It's to keep the individual holding the hostages, to keep the hostages alive while we persuade appropriate mentor to raid whatever location. Right now, using whatever digital platform, once you provide me a telephone number of a negotiator who is negotiating on behalf of a terrorist organization for ransom, I am tracking that number. I am moving to where that individual is while negotiations are going on, other processes are taking place. And those processes provide on an opportunity to arrest or raid the location where they are. Negotiation pay money. The Western countries do it in Africa. If their citizens and nationals are held by terrorists or bandits, they negotiate, they pay ransom, they take their citizens out. But in their country, when you kidnap somebody in their country, they don't negotiate there. They do it because they label our African organization as corrupt. They don't trust our ability. That's why they don't come to the government and say, look, we need the government to go and release the people taken, because they don't trust our ability. That's why the Western countries negotiate. You saw France, Spain, and Germany. They pay millions of euros to the Islamic migrant operating in Algeria to release their aid workers and release journalists that were being held, like journalists like you people. So negotiation is off the table for ransom payment. That is why fuel the terrorist organization. That is my take on it. Negotiation should not be on the table for ransom.
All right, negotiation should be off the table for ransom. I want to sincerely thank you, Mr. Sam. Mr. Sam, of course, for those who are listening, Mr. Sam is joining us from Liberia. I want to believe he's right now in Monrovia. Now, gentlemen, of course, we've heard your various takes on this issue, but I just want to, give us some recent realities and some research insights about our topic of discussion today. Now, first, there is what is called the protection racket economy. A recent study by Institute for Security Studies, that is ISS, indicates that negotiations in the Sahel often inadvertently formalize what they refer to as protection taxes. Now, when governments or local communities negotiate with these groups, they frequently concede to local truces that allow these groups to collect taxes, effectively creating what is now referred to a state within a state. And I want to believe that when Mr. Sam was talking about not paying ransom with money, these are some of the other ways that these groups have, evolved to be able to keep themselves afloat. Now, there is also the ransom paradox. I refer us to a 2023 study on the kidnapping industry in northwest Nigeria. I say kidnapping industry for a reason, because it's now like a business model. Every successful ransom negotiation, as gentlemen have already attested to, provides the liquidity that is needed for these groups to acquire more sophisticated weaponry. Now, there's also the legitimization trap. If you go to countries like Burkina Faso, you go to Mali, you go to Niger, there are different names for these negotiations. In Burkina Faso, for example, they call it localized dialogue. The government has encouraged leaders or elders to talk to their sons in the bush. Now, there are some reports that say this has temporarily provided de-escalation of violence, but that is just a trade-off because the groups in some of the localities that they control, they enforce strict Sharia laws, and they also exclude state education, showing that the price of a negotiation is often the surrender of secular constitutional values. There is also the issue in Mali, where they talk about selective engagement. Of course, following the withdrawal of the French forces, Mali faced immense pressure, as we know, to engage ethnic Tuareg rebels and Al-Qaeda-linked groups. Now, practical evidences have actually shown that this, negotiations only provide seasonal peace, because during rainy season, when they cannot move, they agree to negotiate with government. But once the rains are over and they can move around, they break this truce and then return. Now, finally, we come to Nigeria, where we have peace deals. And I'm happy that Dr. Tony made reference to Katsina State. They have what they now call peace deals between 2019 and 2024. Many governors of the northwestern states in Nigeria have entered into some peace deals that were widely publicized in the media with kingpins, where we see them actually brandishing very dangerous weapons when they come for these peace meetings. Now, in almost every instance, these deals collapse within months. Now, the question is it, whatever will lead to negotiating with bandits, is it a sign of weakness on the part of government? Because I hear Mr. Sam loud and clear when we talk about strengthening the state apparatuses and all of that. Is negotiating with bandits an evidence, a clear evidence of weakness on the part of government? I'm asking both of you. I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, you want me to come first?
Please go ahead if you want to come
Yes,
first.
please, you can go ahead, sir.
Okay, so this clearly indicates weakness in the part of the government. If government is responsible for the protections of the state. If certain quarters, certain portions, certain part of the country is being terrorized daily, and the money, this kind of negotiation I heard you talk about during the rainy season time, they accept negotiation because their ability to move is they get incapacitated during the rainy season time. The roads are bad, it's raining, they can't move a lot. So they take ransoms. This ransom money, once the money dry off, because for them, like you said, that's an industry. They take money. When the money dries up, then they go back and engage in the same banditry act. So this would be a vicious cycle. Every time you negotiate, you pay them money, the money dries out, they come back again and go. This has proven the governments are weak. You can't be weak government. You got to show resilience, perseverance in the eyes of the citizen. But if you see other old people negotiating with their sons, government intermediary, going through this community to negotiate with these terrorists and these bandits, that clearly indicates the weakness of government. Well, it shouldn't be that way. ECOWA, let me get land on this one. ECOWA is a tooless bulldog. ECOWA should have a rapid response force that can respond rapidly in this kind of emergency situation. They should have the requisite satellite imaging. They should have the requisite equipment. All of our money in West Africa, if we dedicate enough portion to protecting West African citizens, we can minimize to the extent where these terrorists and bandits will have very limited ability to harm citizens. The money is not allocated for that in our region. That may acquire a toothless bulldog. So if an ECOWAS country is going through this difficult situation where citizens are terrorized daily, we watch it on television, go to schools, go to mosques, go to community, adopt young kids and take them away. The citizens lose confidence in the ability of their government.
All right, Mr. Sion.
The government is...
Mr. Sion, we may have to, cross over to Dr. Tony for his response because we're almost out of time with this session. Dr. Tony, please, your response to Usman's question as your last thought.
Okay, I think if I got him right, the question would be whether the government is incapacitated vis-a-vis the issue of negotiation.
Yes.
I hope I'm right.
Yes, please. You're right.
Okay, thank you. I think for me to answer that question, I must first of all lay the foundation that terrorists always negotiate. Before they even do anything, they actually look at their strengths and weaknesses. If the weaknesses and the odds are higher, they most likely may not be thinking about even going that route. But once they know that their chances are very robust, you'll see them coming all out. So for the issue of terrorism to strive in any community, before terrorism starts to manifest, it's not just going to be an overnight thing. Before then, they would have been able to look at the community. They have been able to penetrate into the culture, into the political landscape of that community, into the religious landscape of that community. They've been able to gain some level of acceptance and some level of penetration. They've been able to build good level of sleeper cell within that very community and that very area. And they now have some level of political backings. Now, the combination of all this and also exploiting the vulnerability of the greedy ones and the criminals in that society, these are what the terrorist organization will leverage on. So that means that before they can talk about kidnapping, and I want to use the word abduction here, not even just kidnapping, abduction here, they would have convinced themselves that they have internal support. They have the political backings. And in most cases, they end up being right. Like my other colleagues said, you would have seen all this play out severally. The whole ball of blame will now come back to government. If you are talking about whether the government is incapacitated, the government is incapacitated not because they don't have the military might, they don't have the expertise, or because they don't have intelligence, but because those that ought to come all out are in one way or the other, either sympathetic to their ideology, or they have the political advantage therein, or they are element of criminals that want to benefit from the loot that is going to come out from the ransom. The combination of all this makes government incapacitated at the end of the day. Because you want to try to say you want to go and rescue. We've heard of stories of soldiers that were asked to go and attack Boko Haram, and right even in the midst of the soldiers shooting soldiers for killing too much of bandits. We've heard stories like that. So you see that participants, criminals, sleeper cell, those that are sympathetic to the act of terrorism, even being part and parcel of security agencies itself, make government incapacitated. Mr. President is not going to shoot. He's not going to bear arms. He's not going to the battlefield. These boys that are going to the battlefield, to what extent have they been profiled? If they are not properly profiled, government will remain perpetually, helpless. If the political class too is not properly profiled, and you have people that are propagating the act of this terrorism from government, from National Assembly, from state houses and the like, they will perpetually be incapacitated, not because they don't have the mic, but because those people that ought to say move, they are not saying it with the whole of their strength.
Indeed, I think we have to go at this point, Dr. Tony. I mean, this is one issue that will always be on the front burner. We can't run away from it as long as this lives amongst us. But we want to thank our first panelist, Dr. Tony Feyaton. He is the Director General for the International Institute of Professional Security in Lagos, Nigeria. And we also had Mr. Sam Sayong, a former Deputy Director of Operations at the National Security Agency in Liberia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Mr. Sayong, thank you. Dr. Tony, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Indeed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sayong. Thank you so.
All right. Well, Usman, go ahead.
We now turn our attention to a crisis that often, it flies under the radar most of the time. Every year, thousands of Nigerians, I don't know about other parts of the continent, but thousands of Nigerians every year face life-threatening snake bites. Yet, access to life-saving antivenom remains a luxury for many. Imo, I'm sure you know of this.
All right. Well, let me also add that Nigeria has the highest rate in terms of snake bite. And to help us understand the mood and medical reality, we are being joined by two experts in this field and medical field to say. From the U.S., we have Dr. Ifeanyi Sofo. He is a global health physician and health equity advocate. Dr. Ifeanyi, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's pretty early where you are this morning, but thank you for finding time to be on the program with us.
Yeah, Imo. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I have my cup of tea, so I'm ready to go.
Very well. Then we also have in Nigeria where Usman is joining us on this program, Professor Chudi Okani. He is a consultant pathologist. Yes, and Dr. Prof, we are glad that you could join us, and thank you so much for coming on the program. Dr. Ifeanyi did mention that you both know yourselves. Welcome again.
Thank you very much. Thanks a million. Ifeanyi, we finished from the same school. He was my senior.
You mentioned it. Welcome. Usman.
West Africa is proud of both of you, I must say. Dr. Sofo, I want to start with you. This is 2026. Why is snake bite still a recurring emergency? Is this a case of government apathy toward rural health? Because that's where we have most of these issues. Or are the logistical challenges simply insurmountable to the government at all levels?
Okay, thanks again for having me. I think this is a problem of inequity. Health inequity, because snake bite is one of those diseases that WHO has classified as neglected tropical diseases. And, in simple terms, these are just diseases that mainly affect poor people. You've alluded to the fact that it's mainly rural, it's mainly in communities where you have poor infrastructure. And because of that, it's neglected. So it's in the same class as far as WHO is concerned, with things like leprosy, with things like lymphatic filariasis, river blindness. These are neglected diseases. These are diseases of poverty. Collectively, they affect more than 1 billion people globally. So it's a thing of inequity, because even if you look on the unfortunate situation we're talking about now, you would see how, that kind of plays in this particular situation. So until look at different diseases equally in a way. It doesn't matter who that particular disease affects. That is when we begin to, stop having this kind of thing. This was in Abuja. This was in Lugbe. I lived in Abuja. Lugbe was not far from where I lived. But when you get to Lugbe, you would see that there are also different. There are different areas. I don't know exactly where she lived, but you would realize that the snake bites will be commoner in places where you have very low infrastructure, poor environment and things like that.
Dr. Sofo, let me just come in here. I mean, with no clear centralized response, who is left to provide oversight for these vulnerable communities, as you mentioned?
Well, interestingly, in Nigeria, healthcare delivery is on the concurrent list, which means that the different levels of government have their core responsibilities. Federal government is in charge of tertiary care, state government, secondary care, general hospitals, and all, while primary healthcare centers are really under the purview of the local council. But when you have a situation where local councils are mainly not functional across Nigeria, and this is where this particular situation really falls within the purview of local council. Because ideally, if the primary healthcare centers were functional, then she would have gone first to primary healthcare closest to her, because that is really the healthcare that is closest to our people. So this particular issue, first of all, falls squarely within the AMAC, Abuja Municipal Area Council. And if you look at the current news, at least coming out of the council, investigations being done by auditors show that more than 100 billion naira, was embezzled recently. So it just tells you that picture, that look, this particular situation, we need to hold the local council responsible first, because they've not provided primary health care that is closest, affordable, to the people that live there.
Usman. All right, while we wait for Usman to come back online, Prof. Chude, let me come to you. I mean, from a pathological and clinical view, how does this lack of standardized treatment facilities affect the mortality rate in these cases?
Thank you again for inviting me. On the question you asked about the clinical presentation and how it affects, there are, snake bite is not just something that is a straightforward way. There are too many factors that influence the outcome, the treatment outcome, and the survival of the patients. When snake bites, the first thing that happens is the initial first aid that is given to the individual. It plays a big role. Most times when in our environment, when such a thing happens, people rush to traditional home healers, to prayer houses, where they think this one is spiritual. This snake was sent from, somewhere, the enemy behind. Yes. So they would like to pray and then cast away the demons before taking the person to the hospital. And then another one again, what truly happens at the site of snake bites. And then, as I said, there are too many factors. The type of snake that bites, I'm not a snake specialist, but of course I know we have the vipers, we have the cobras, we have the mambas, we have the python. The python usually is not harmful, but the vipers and the mambas and the cobras, they have their own effects. And then another thing again that matters, the sites of bite. Most times is at the lower limbs, maybe in the foot, or bite to the foot, or maybe to the leg, or any other part of the body. But if the bite happens on the upper portion of the body, it's more disastrous compared to that happening down, because of the relative blood supply that is there, and so many things happening too. Then is the bite offensive bite or defensive bite? Most times snake bites are defensive. The snake is afraid, wants to protect himself, wants to run out. Maybe you march on the snake, just bite immediately. But if the snake probably mistakes the victim for a prey, and then gets prepared and then bites, that one is more disastrous, because the volume of venom that is infiltrated is enormous. Another one again that we need to consider as part, those traditional practices, as I mentioned, sometimes our people will try to tie tourniquet, maybe tie a rope or a cloth around that area of bites, just to prevent the flow, or some people may even use blades to cut open the place, and some people may even suck that wound area, to remove the so-called venoms around the site. These are very dangerous practices before eventually they get to the hospital. Now, when they get to the hospital, so many factors also play out. Remember that these patients that are beaten, they pay out from their pocket, out of pocket expenditure. And these venoms, these antivenoms are not cheap. They are very expensive. I tried to, to check the price. I was giving them between 30,000 to 150,000 naira per vial. And of course, we know that people can, so an individual may take as much as 20 vials per dose, just, the initial loading dose.
That's a whole lot, Prof.
In order to contain this,
Mm.
Hello?
Yes, I was saying that's a whole
Yeah,
lot.
well,
I mean, looking at this.
So then the person from as Dr. Onsofo mentioned, is a disease of the poor. Somebody coming from his farm who probably does not have up to 10,000 naira in his house, now being taken to a hospital where he has to spend almost 1 million naira on the spot to be able to be taken care of. It's something else. And then the training. Most of the people there are not properly trained. And then, of course, the fear that anti-venom is may kill an individual even before the venom itself kills. We know that these things are preventable. We can manage the after effects that may come up when venom is administered, what we call anaphylactic reaction. There are ways whereby good hospitals will manage that. So the risk, we weigh in the risk and the benefit. I think the benefit outweighs the risk. We must do something. And then remember that when such a thing happens, and then the individual is admitted, it also depends, everything also is dependent on the way the individual is managed and the time interval before presentation. If somebody has already got to the last stage of shock or probably the last stage of complication before the person arrives at the hospital, there isn't much the doctors or the healthcare givers can do to save the person's life.
All right, Prof. Let me cross over to Dr. Nsofo. I mean, he talked about snake bite still being classified as a neglected tropical disease. I would like to ask Dr. Nsofo, what does that mean for funding and attention?
Well, I mean, it's really, as far as funding is concerned, it's in the name. It's neglected. So. If you're a health planner looking at how do we allocate resources to health issues in our communities, snake bite does not even feature at all, right? Because people are focused on more what they consider as more pressing thing, So the neglect is in the name. That's why it's neglected tropical diseases. And you see, if you one thing that Professor Kani mentioned was, the issue of financing. And this is why health financing is really a very important part of planning for our health system. Most people in Nigeria pay out of pocket, close to about 75% of our total health expenditure in the country is out of pocket. So Nigerians pay. So the question is that how many percentage of Nigerians have health insurance? Because again, when you talk to Nigerians about health insurance, people are telling you things like, I know it's not my portion, I will not fall sick, things like that. And it happens, unfortunately, in this case that we're discussing. So in discussing this particular issue, we also need to look at, healthcare financing as a whole and the role that our people have to play in buying health insurance for themselves. And, going back to your question on neglect, we need to look at the social determinants of health. Because it's very, when people talk about healthcare delivery, they think that it happens in a vacuum. But the social determinants of health are those non-medical, non-health related issues in our communities that impact our healthcare. So things like sanitation, things like urban planning, things like, our social, cultures and norms that, or religion that influence, how people behave. So there are just all sorts of factors that contribute to this neglect. Government has a huge role, and even in the government, if we need to place it squarely, we need to take it down from federal, state, but mainly local councils, to provide primary health care.
Usman, well, sorry.
Okay, Dr. Sofo.
Yes,
sorry,
Usman,
I just wanted to add quickly. Yes, I just wanted to add quickly. You've talked about snake bites being an NTD, and I see a report here that says Nigeria is has the third highest incidence of snake bites globally. And it is estimated that Nigeria experiences between 15,000 to 20,000 cases annually resulting in approximately 2,000 deaths. I mean, 2,000 people dying from a particular disease. Should that disease still be an NTD?
Okay, so what's your angle? You're saying that is fewer people dying
I mean,
compared
the number of people we lose to snake bites, 2,000 in a year. What should this still be the situation?
Oh, no, I mean, unfortunately, it shouldn't, because remember, if you're looking at just the number, somebody may say, if you compared it to, say, women who die during pregnancy, childbirth and after delivery, probably close to about 80,000 women die in Nigeria every year, during pregnancy, childbirth, and post-delivery. Somebody may say, but, those numbers really don't compare. But you see, the issue is that, a neglected tropical disease, or a neglected disease for that matter, it's just so debilitating. Look at all the harrowing experiences that she went through. She was sleeping, she felt some prick, she woke up, it was a snake bite. There was nothing to do. She had to hail a boat ride. That particular boat ride obviously took some time. And like Professor Kandi said, you shouldn't even be moving around that much when you have snake bite, because the likelihood of the venom traveling faster to vital organs is very high. The boat ride goes through all the chaos in Abuja, gets to the first facility, they couldn't provide, and they go to the next facility. With how health workers are overworked at the paramedical centers, there are all sorts of delays. So that just shows you the level of neglect that's involved in, neglected tropical diseases. 2,000 people dying every year. It's a lot, because the question you should ask yourself is, in countries where snake bites are no longer public health issues, how many people? Do people even die when they have snake bites? Right. So that's the issue. That neglect for me is the core thing, and that has to be reversed.
Well, Prof, I wanted
Imo.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes,
I wanted us to go to Prof.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Prof, because he talked about I think it was Prof that mentioned the preparation of local communities and local response emergencies. But how prepared are they in this case? I know that Dr. Sofa broke it down from the federal, the state, and the local level. And usually emergencies like this, when it happens at the rural level, it's always a problem, because either there are no ambulances, there are no trained professional healthcare in this case. But how prepared are they for emergencies of this nature?
Okay, thank you. The straightforward answer there is that nobody is prepared, because, of course, as even Dr. Ansofo mentioned, snake bite is for the poor, and most times government neglects poor people, those diseases affecting the poor. We all remember what happened during the COVID-19. Immediately COVID-19 came. Before we knew it, vaccines were provided, and everybody was being forced to even take vaccine. That's COVID-19. I also remember in 2014 when Ebola came. At least Ebola entered Nigeria around June, July, August, and people were running helter-skelter. Up to today, I have not heard of any Ebola vaccine or something, because that probably have affected the African countries. So these things are very, very much with us. Nobody is prepared at any local government to take care of snake bite victims. I think that even what the local government should concentrate on is in educating the people, not even in providing the
emergencies.
Vaccine should be left for probably secondary or tertiary health institution. They should actually train people. When this thing happens, this is what you are supposed to do. You need to calm the individual down, then calm the person down, then probably take the person immediately without much motion to a facility that has it. And I do not also expect every hospital to stock anti-venom, vaccine in their place. I don't expect that.
But is anything wrong in that, Prof?
There are a lot of logistical issues. When you talk about anti-venom, it's a vaccine, and most vaccines are potent at a particular temperature. You need to stock them at a desirable environment where you cannot vouch for electricity 24 hours, even 6 hours supply of electricity anywhere, and you are telling a cottage hospital to keep vaccine. That one na death sentence now. Anybody who takes it is just trying to kill himself, because it will not be properly stocked. It should be in central area, but those places should not be too far away from the immediate community. Another thing again, not every community is at that risk. There are communities that you don't even get so much snakes, but there are areas that snake is endemic. Like in the middle belt of Nigeria, talk about Nasarawa states, because this more or less is in Nasarawa, if I'm not mistaken. Nasarawa, Plateau State, Benue State. I once lived in Benue. I experienced one or two things happening there. And then Kogi State, and then Abuja, of course. Abuja is the middle belt. That's the area where attention should be moved. Not that people should not think of emergency can occur at any time. Even in my place, people die of snake bites. I'm from the southeastern part of Nigeria. But what I'm trying to say is that it should be well furnished, well localized, and where people there should be properly trained. But the local council should concentrate more on prevention. Training people on how to keep the environment clean, as Dr. Nsofo mentioned. Keep cut down bushes around your homes. Make sure you don't bring things that attract a snake. And if you have to walk around in the night, use your torchlight now, and then wear your shoes and put on some things that will help protect you. And then if eventually that the snake bite happens, tell people what to do, that they don't need to start taking the person to traditionalists or to prayer home or sucking out those things. With this little, I think the local council can do well. Then when it gets to the hospital setting, then the people there should also be properly trained. If you ask an average doctor how is snake antivenom administered, most of us may not even know that you have to give it through IV, put it in normal, dilute it in normal saline, and then what is the dosage? There's no even dosage. You cannot say you give this one vial, give this one. Everything is dependent on the clinical presentation, the degree of venomation, and so many things happening.
Probably all of this.
Type of snake.
Yeah, probably all of these things you've mentioned really put it in along with the entities like Prof mentioned. But Usman, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes. My question was to Dr. Nsofo, because Prof has touched on the issue of traditional, medicine. Traditional approaches to snake bite, and he has also touched on the issue of high-risk states in Nigeria. And from what we've gathered, states most affected in Nigeria include Gombe, Plateau, Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Nasarawa, Kogi, Kebbi, Oyo, Benue, and Taraba. But for those who are Nigerians who know Gombe State very well, Gombe State even they actually have a tribe called the Tangale tribe, some of their cultural practices from birth to death are associated with snakes. And therefore, a 2025 record shows that in 2025 alone, there were 54 deaths and 1,591 cases of snake bites in Gombe State alone. And now my question to Dr. Nsofo is, Prof raised the issue of traditional versus modern medicine, especially with respect to snake bites. Is there a tension between the two? Because there are some communities that have actually evolved some traditional methods that have been working over the years.
Well, if we're being honest, there's always a tension between traditional and orthodox medicine. But I think that, the major difference is that one is properly regulated. At least one is fairly regulated, orthodox medicine. Traditional, well, mostly people just do whatever it is they think is the right thing, whatever it is that is prevailing in their own communities. And that is where the regulation comes in. That is where the challenge comes in, because when you look at it, traditional medicine is really plays into the social norms. And I know a lot about Gombe. I've worked in Gombe, and snake bites is a major issue there. But you see, when people begin to see it within that community as the norm, right? Snake bites will happen. What that simply means is that people will not, take into consideration preventive measures. Because even in the Gombe, the fact that most of Gombe is agrarian, people go to the farm, they harvest, they store it, they process it themselves mostly. There's you don't have so much mechanized farming. Snakes can actually lurk, in all sorts of places. It kind of makes it difficult for people. So there's a tension between orthodox medicine and traditional medicine. Traditional medicine plays a lot into social norms. Nobody is regulating it. Nobody studies this. Because if you look at orthodox medicine, before policies begin to come out, you've done all sorts of research, you've done all sorts of trials, you've gone through all sorts of ethical boards to look at what you're doing to be able to say, okay, this is safe. The benefits outweigh the risks. So in traditional medicine, that really does not happen. And I need to touch a bit, of what Prof said about prevention. To me, snakebite being a neglected tropical disease, and if you look at the fact that we're struggling with resources to fund our healthcare, prevention should be the core of it. And the prevention really has to do with health education. People need to know. People need to know that when there's a snake bite, it's not a death sentence at that point. What may become a death sentence is what you do or what you don't do as a result. The delays that you undergo before you seek care. Whether somebody ties a tourniquet or socks, all those things are very harmful to our people. So that panic even really calms people down when they know the right things to do. And I agree with Prof about primary healthcare. Everyone cannot stock antivenom. They don't have the facilities for that. But at least when somebody has a snake bite at home and they do the right things and convey the person to the primary health center, the people at that primary health center should know what to do to stabilize that person before they take the person to the next level of referral, to secondary or tertiary facility. So that is where people need to know. The problem is that what people know about snake bite is mainly within the realms of myth, tradition, what our people say about snake bite, not really the science behind it and all the preventive measures you need to do in order to make sure that people survive.
Well, Dr. Nsova, I do have a question for you, but before I do that, let me just quickly acknowledge our contributors on Facebook who have dropped a couple of comments to tell us where they are actually watching from. Big thanks to Jonathan S. Sansuwe Sr., and he says, "Good morning, my chief. I am watching live from Henrytown, Gbagbo County, that's in Liberia. Thank you so much for kindly informing the world about this." And we also have a message from Massa Fanbule, and it says he's also watching the interview from Liberia. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us from Liberia and following the program. Well, Dr. Nsofa, I do have a question for you. Are there success examples within Africa and even in the Western world where we can learn from in preventing snake bites and its casualties?
Excuse me. I mean, no particular example comes to mind, but I think all Professor Kanye and I have said today is really the evidence based, because it's not rocket science. Snake bite has been with humanity for as long as we can remember. But if you look at the fact that, in different places across the West, in the global North, some countries, across Asia, Latin America, and even in Africa, Rwanda would be a good example. The question is the quality of care that people get. That's what will determine your survival. Because even here in the US, if you're in a far-flung community where there's no primary health care, and you have a snake bite, for instance, and you do the wrong, you're probably going to die. It's just that quality of care and the level of public knowledge and awareness that changes people's behaviors. But again, and if we localize this thing again to snake bites to this particular case, the fact that it's a disease of poverty, and how, like I said initially, the social determinants of health play into this. If you go to Lugbe, for instance, where this particular case happened, a significant portion of Lugbe has poor sanitation. People dump refuse in the streets, right? Most of the places are overgrown. Most of the houses are not really approved. Landlords build all sorts of houses because, think about it, the snake was in her apartment. was in her room. So the question is that how do you have a house built for human dwelling that snakes can
Dr.
actually
Nsofo,
get
in other words, town planning has a huge role to play in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said initially, social determinants of health, town planning, who approves the buildings, sanitation, how do we keep our environments clean? How do we, even education, social norms within our social context. If you go to that community now, I actually read some other articles where people in the same Lube, talked about how they killed this snake in their house. So just looking at it, snake bite is a major public health issue in Lube. Then the question is, who is the chairman of AMAC? Who is the counselor for health for AMAC? What is the FCT minister? As if FCT minister even made a comment about this particular case. What are they doing to ensure it doesn't happen again? So the lessons, the evidence base for managing snake bite, preventing and managing it is there. The question is that we do not have that political will to make sure that we implement it so that people don't die needlessly.
Incidentally, this happened to be the local government Usman is in.
Imo is secretly chatting me that they have caught my local government chairman. But in any case, let me go back to Prof, because although Prof admitted earlier on that he's not a snake bite specialist, but being a general physician, one can't help but ask this very simple question. Of course, Dr. Nsofo, part of his recommendation was, of course, education on how to prevent it, because that's the surest way to minimize these snake bites. Already was established. This a report says over 70% of victims bitten by snake it happened while they are working on agricultural land. On the issue with respect to gender and age, they say men are disproportionately affected due to outdoor labor, and of course 30% cases of in Nigeria happen. It occurs on children, and they tend to suffer more severe what they call envenomation due to their smaller bodies. Like Prof said, they have a smaller body, so any little movement can circulate. But the question I want to ask Prof here is: do you also agree that education should be strengthened? And if yes, should we begin to target primary and secondary schools, given this report that children, they are quicker to become victims of snake bites? Should we encourage putting some level of maybe in civic education on how children from primary school through to secondary school should be educated on some preventive measures?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The answer is straightforward: yes. The education should be at all levels, but primarily starting from that early beginning, educating our people. Education is all multifaceted. You have to tell them what to do even to prevent, as we've been talking about. Prevention is the key word there. So in their civic education, it can be incorporated what to do, or how not to be exposed to snake bites, even telling them different types of snakes. They should know, because I am from a community in Igbo land. I'm from Idemili. There's this particular snake that we avoid. We don't even kill it. It's harmless. We call it Eki Idemili, a python. We call it it doesn't it's not harmful. It doesn't affect. It doesn't bite anybody. So that particular one needs to know which ones are harmful and which ones are not harmful. And there are different species. In as much as I'm not a specialist, if I see one, I know cobra, I know viper, I know mamba. And these are the three major ones that are very deadly. And then, of course, when that happens, it is also of importance for us to know that the type of snake that bites. We know that vipers mainly cause, bleeding disorders and so many things associated with that. And then we know that cobra and mamba, they are related to neurotoxicity, whereby the individual may have a paralysis of the muscles, even the respiratory may fail, and then eyesight issues, so many things happening to the nervous system, So and then the vaccines are also different. When we mention prevention, all those things, we remember that vaccines are imported. I don't think there's any place in Nigeria where they produce snake vaccine. I have not seen, I've not read. I don't think so. When such a thing is imported, most times it's tailored towards the environment where the vaccine is produced. And then particular snake type may be endemic in a particular area, and you are bringing in another vaccine that is not even working. So these are some of the factors we must consider. So we need to
just to add to a list, Prof. Sorry,
Hmm?
Just to add to the list of snakes you have mentioned, because this is for the purpose of education.
Okay.
They say there is this one they call carpet vipers, and they say it's actually the single species that is responsible for about 66% to 79% of all snake bites in Nigeria. They say its venom is hemotoxic. So I would want you to expatiate on what does hemotoxic mean, even though here they say it causes severe internal bleeding and tissue destruction.
Okay.
Carpet
Now
vipers.
let me take you to pathology, where that's my area of jurisdiction, you know. Usually when there is a snake bite, at the point of snake bite, a lot of reactions take place, including tissue death, what we call tissue necrosis, and then eventually the venom moves from that skin to the subcut, eventually gets to the blood circulation. In pathology, there's what we call complement activation system, whereby we have the classical and the alternate pathway. Snake venom is known to activate the alternate pathway of that complement cascade. And then when that happens, a lot of inflammatory processes are, activated, and then a lot of what we call the inflammatory mediators are released in the blood circulation, and then that will cause one major event. The platelet will be affected, and then another one is what we call DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, whereby the clotting factors are consumed, and then the person is left, hollow. The person can bleed anyhow. Apart from the local bleeding that can occur at the site, this individual can end up having uncontrolled bleeding. So one thing that must be avoided by every individual, whether it's a cobra or viper, because viper, as you mentioned, viper is the one that causes that hemo stuff, but most cobras may cause neurotoxicity. When that happens, the individual, there must be avoidance of NSAID, the group of drug we call NSAID, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Of course, aspirin belongs to that group, ibuprofen, diclofenac, naproxen, pyrazocam, they belong to that group we call the NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. These drugs naturally affect bleeding, processes. And if somebody is already challenged because of the venom, and then you are giving the person such a drug to be able to contain the pain the person may be feeling, it may aggravate the situation.
So this further emphasizes the need for education, even among the medical personnel that will attend to victims.
Yes. So when the person there are things that you must never do, and there are things you must do. First of all, as we all mentioned, that you have to calm the individual. When the person is brought to the hospital, you assess the person. You try to make the initial diagnosis. What is the type of snake most likely that this person it caused the envenomation? You remember that snakes are not poisonous. So it's good that we make such a statement here.
How do you mean, Prof?
Snakes generally are not poisonous.
That's strange. That is
strange.
How do you mean, Prof?
Yes, no snake is poisonous, but snakes are venomous. Now, let me, as a pathologist, what I understand as being poison, anything that you touch or you eat that harms the body is poisonous. But snake is not, if you touch snake, it's not poisonous. It doesn't kill you by touching it. When you eat it, it's even a very powerful food. If you eat snake, there are people in my place, they enjoy snake. It's a delicious, it's a delicacy. So snakes are not poisonous, but they are venomous in the sense that it's the venom that causes the problem.
All right, Prof.
So
we have to start rounding off, and we will be out of time very soon. But let me just quickly throw a last question to Dr. Nsofo. Well, how do you think climate change, flooding, and all of that has really increased snake-human encounter, not just in Nigeria, but across the sub-region? and bringing in climate change here, because that is what we're all facing across board.
Mm. No, absolutely. I mean, climate change is spot on. It's also, I would classify it as one of those social determinants of health.
Yeah.
It's affecting essentially every facet of our lives, and also worsening the incidence of snake bite. When you look at the fact that because of snake bites, for instance, when it rains a lot, in particular communities, you're likely going to have more grasses, more shrubs growing. So the likelihood of, in endemic communities, snakes hiding in the grass, very high. Even as a result of snake bites, and you have drought, that means that farmers, villagers have to walk long distances to look for water supply. Snake dams, because of the hot environment, the snakes will also look for where to cooler areas where they can, relax. The likelihood of getting close to human dwelling, and if you have poor housing, entering into the ceiling or going through cracks in the wall to enter people's, homes, very high. And this is why when you talk about climate change, it's not something we should clear about. It's really, cuts across, different sectors and impact on our health.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Very fascinating insight there. Of course, today I have been educated, I have to admit. And of course, apparently, it appears that the West African landscape is shifting from high-stakes security negotiations with bandits or terrorists or armed groups, as we may want to call them, to the issues of fundamental rights to healthcare. Imo.
Well, indeed, Usman, it reminds us that democracy isn't just about the ballot box, it's about the security and health of every citizen. Usman.
Definitely. Once again, we want to say a sincere thank you to our guest, Dr. Tony Ofoyeton, and Professor, and then, of course, we also had earlier Mr. Sam Sion from Liberia, and just now we've had Dr. Ifeanyi Sofo, and, of course, Professor Chudi Okane, who joined us all the way from the United States. Imo.
Yes, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate you being part of the program.
Awesome. Thank you.
Indeed. And most importantly, we want to thank you, the citizens of West Africa, for tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, and following us on the radio. I am Imo Edet.
And I am Usman Umar from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. This has been Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's bye from this end.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Your current affairs program, Citizens Hour, is now more inclusive, more educative, and brings you a broader perspective on political and governance matters. This quarter on Citizens Hour, we spotlight issues on democracy, civic education, women and youth participation in governance, and other policy issues. Every Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. and a repeat broadcast at 6 p.m. on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM, Dakar. Also, don't miss our special monthly debate, which comes up every last Saturday of the month on trending political and governance issues in the sub-region. Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.